And Mara, you'll let people in, I hope.
Yes, I can manage the.
Thanks. I appreciate your help. So this is our yearly review of our legislative agenda. Thank you all for coming. We have a very healthy group of people here. Um, we so with our legislative agenda, what we have to do is basically guess. I mean, not guess, but it's based upon what we know is going to be introduced or what we think is going to be introduced. It's not always accurate. But then, of course, there's always surprises. People put in bills we had no idea they were going to put in. So um, the that's why you may what we're going to do is talk about just some of our agenda. We have a much bigger agenda than this, but all I can do is talk about some of the things. That's all we really have time for. I'll try to. I think the best way to proceed is for me to go through everything and and then I've got all my experts on here. So when people want to ask questions, feel free to ask questions either in the chat or afterwards. And we'll stay on with the experts and they can answer your questions. And one thing I'm going to say at the end of this session, but I also say at the beginning, for everybody out there who is watching this General Assembly session, make your voice heard. It's really important. The ways you can do that is you can be on our weekly email list. I know many of you already are, but those of you who aren't, get on it. Also, you'll get action alerts from us sometimes, which basically says, such and such bill is coming up in a committee tomorrow afternoon. Please contact your legislators. But really, another thing I think is really important. And yesterday we had our what's called our facts not fun session, and I was chatting with one of the long-term legislators, and he said to me something that everybody will tell you the same thing, but a lot of lobbying and influence is relationships, and the lobbyists typically have very good relationships with the legislators, and our lobbyists at the Poverty Law Center do, but then there's all these other lobbyists out there as well. But you, as a non-lobbyist, can certainly have a relationship with your own legislator, and there's no reason not to. I mean, it's a little bit more difficult to. It's easier to do it during the off session, but I still think people should take the time and the energy to contact their legislators, their delegate, and their senator, and just say, "Hey, I like this bill. I don't like this bill," et cetera. So just keep that in mind. So let's get started on the agenda. Next slide. Go ahead, next slide, Laura. So this is we have 15 people this year, the most we've ever had, that are going to be over there talking about a lot of different issues. There's a partial picture from yesterday's Facts Not Funds. Next. And so what I try to do this year is to put some of our issues into different areas: keeping people housed, help families and children, improve access to justice, and stop the spread of abusive junk fees. Next, please. So under keep people in their homes, the Poverty Law Center supports extending the time a tenant may pay late rent from 5 days to 14 days. Now, we've tried this many times. I really don't know how many times we tried this, but this Delegate Price is going to put this bill in again. She's a wonderful advocate. This is something that tenants organizations and tenants have told us that is very important. Basically, what it says is a landlord can't try to evict you unless you're 14 days beyond when your rent was due. The thinking here is that if you had a problem paying your rent, you're not likely to have something much 5 days later, but 14 days later, you may have gotten a paycheck or some other income. And it's more likely it's really bad. It's a good thing for landlords and tenants. Less people being evicted is better for both. The next thing on here is changing how in-home care is financed, so people aren't forced into nursing homes. So what we mean by that is there was a federal rule passed this last year which allowed states to change the way that in-home care is financed to be the same as nursing home care is already financed. In other words, it's called prospective financing, so that the in-home um, healthcare agency can get paid upfront instead of after providing the services, just like nursing homes, which we hope will lead to more in-home companies being willing to do this service, which also leads to less people going to nursing homes. The next thing on here is fair and reasonable standards on home utility service disconnection. We have tried to do this um, for many years. I think this is our third year working on this. And so we sort of get into this dialogue with the power companies, the gas companies, the water companies. But there really needs to be fair and reasonable standards so that people are treated fairly. I mean, getting your utilities disconnected is a major event, a real problem. It leads to homelessness, and there ought to be fair and reasonable standards, so that everybody knows, including the homeowners or the what the standards are and how you can avoid being disconnected. Another thing that's not on here, but I just thought I would mention because it was a really nice article in the Richmond Times Dispatch on Monday called "Remaking a Mobile Home Park." Real good story by Dave Ress about how I think it's no, I'm gonna get the name wrong, but it's Bermuda something. But it's a manufactured home park in Richmond that was bought by a nonprofit, and actually probably due to legislation that we got passed a few years ago about when the owner of one of these parks wants to sell, they have to give notice, and nonprofits and the tenants themselves can try to buy it. And in this case, they did buy it, and they've really improved the park. And so we have a couple of more bills this year to further improve on that. One called the Mobile Home Community Residents Opportunity to Purchase Act, and then also a Mobile Home Community Residents Rights Act. So this is we think mobile home parks are a very important piece of the affordable housing that we should maintain. Next. So next slide. Yeah. So next category is help families and children thrive. We support expansion of free school and summer meals for hungry children. This really ought to be a no-brainer for folks. The school lunch thing it's pretty complicated. I mean, there's all these rules about who is eligible and whether a whole school is eligible and that sort of thing. But we really need to further expand and make sure that all kids are covered. It's been proven over and over again that kids can't learn if they're hungry. The next one is extending health care coverage to all children. There was also a story in the Richmond Times Dispatch on Monday, and it was entitled "States Expand Health Coverage for Immigrants." And it was in that article, it mentioned that 11 states and DC provide full health insurance coverage to more than 1 million low-income immigrants, regardless of their legal status. And Virginia needs to do the same thing. These are children. We do not need to worry about what their status is. Next thing is improving legal representation in child dependency cases. We have a project called the Family Preservation Project, which helps keep families together. There was another story out just recently in the Williamsburg paper, and what it involves attorneys that are representing parents who are in a legal proceeding to have the kids taken away are properly paid so they can do a good job of representing parents. It has to do with training and certification of attorneys for these parents, and also a model for how you can represent parents. So the next thing is, let's see what else. So, and we oppose this issue, this eliminating longstanding best interests of the child factors. It comes up almost every single year I can think of. It comes up in some way where somebody wants to monkey with the best interests of the child. I mean, what that's referring to is when there's a custody case, visitation case involving children, you have to look at what's best for the kids, not for the parents. And so we're typically involved in making sure that there's not the unintentional consequence of favoring an abusive parent over protective parents. So let's go ahead to the next one. Improving access to justice. So allowing appeals in public benefit cases where the government violates the law should also be a no-brainer, but we've had a lot of trouble getting this done. But there needs to be, it's a due process constitutional question about whether you should, if you're denied benefits, you should be able to appeal to a court. There needs to be a further study of eligibility rules for Medicaid and other life-sustaining benefits. There needs to be a fair court process before children are separated from their parents, which I talked about in the earlier session. We need to make it easier for people under guardianship to ask that the guardianship can be changed. This issue about class actions, sometimes I think class action lawsuits get kind of a bad name because who among us hasn't gotten one of those cards in the mail that we're part of a class and we're going to get $2 or something like that. I mean, so I think people think class actions are not all that important, but they are very important to enforce the law. It's great to give people rights, but if they can't enforce those rights, it's not much use to people. And class actions are a very effective way of getting your rights enforced. And in Virginia, you can do a class action in federal court for a federal claim, but if you don't have a federal claim, you're out of luck. And there's only 2 states in the country that don't allow class actions based on state law, and that's Virginia and Mississippi. And I'll give you a very quick example. Somebody called me on Monday. They'd gotten, even though we had passed the Fairness in Lending Act in 2020, and payday lenders and car title lenders left the state in favor of more affordable lenders, we still have these folks who try to do car title loans over the internet, and she's mailed her title to this company, and so they're charging her. She's got a $3,000 loan, and she's going to have to repay $9,000, $6,000 in interest, which is clearly illegal under Virginia law. But it's going to be hard for her to do anything about that unless an attorney takes it on, and it's hard for an attorney to take it on unless they can do a class action and involve all the other people that they're probably harming. And then the last one there, legislation to improve unemployment entitlement decisions. Our current system is operating without information material to determining whether a claimant is entitled to benefits. So this leads to delayed and inaccurate decisions about unemployment, increased appeals, improper payments, both overpayments and underpayments, and it doesn't make any sense. We need to improve this process. So next slide. Okay, stopping the spread of abusive junk fees. So this has sort of been a big topic nationally. President Biden talked about abusive junk fees in his State of the Union address last year. And I think all of us have been impacted by this. And a lot of the talk has been around airlines and resort fees and stuff like that. But it really affects low-income people probably the most. There is going to be Delegate McClure put in a bill that requires the total price for goods or services, including all fees or charges, to be disclosed prominently before a sale. This is an amendment to the Virginia Consumer Protection Act. We will be supporting that bill. It seems like a common sense approach. We have somebody putting in the Truth in Renting Act, requiring landlords to disclose all fees, and in addition to the rents, the potential tenants. Also seems like a no-brainer. I mean, but it's really become hide the ball type thing where landlords don't tell you. They tell you what the rent is, but then they don't tell you about this fee and that fee. And continuing with landlords, we have legislation to prohibit landlords from charging for maintenance fees, which they're probably by law already required to provide. prohibiting landlords from charging convenience fees. So I actually ran into this myself with my daughter's. I'm paying my daughter's rent, and they tell you, for the convenience of paying online, it's going to be X amount per month. But guess what? That's the only way to pay. And then the last one has to do with prohibiting abusive utility reconnection fees. So we talked earlier about utilities disconnecting people, but what about when you try to get reconnected? Sometimes they charge way too much in fees. And there's been some testimony, I think, in some hearings before the State Corporation Commission, if I'm not mistaken, saying that it doesn't really cost them anything to reconnect people. So why are they charging people a big fee for that? And then I think, do I have another slide, Maura? Yeah. And I just added this last slide. It didn't seem to fit into categories. One thing we can't seem to ever get around is the unbridled greed of people who want to take advantage and exploit people who are in difficult financial situations. There is something I never heard about until a couple of months ago when one of the delegates called me and talked about probate lenders. These are folks who find out that you may have an interest in somebody's estate who has died, and they try to loan you money based on that, and then they try to claim it's not a loan. And her legislation, this is Delegate Coiner, is going to make it clear that that is a loan and is subject to our usury laws. And then finally, these workplace payday lenders, last year they tried to pass. They call themselves earned wage access, but it's a business that it's all over the place. Some employers offer this for free. Basically, it's people getting paid early. People need to get paid, and they can't wait a week because they got to pay their rent, that sort of thing. And so they want to get paid early. Some employers do this for free for people. Some banks do this for free. But then there's these other companies that charge a fee for you to get paid a couple of days early. They again are trying to claim that they're not loans. They want to get legislation passed to be an exception to our Fairness in Lending Act, which we are opposed to. Not so much. We're not trying to stop people from doing this. We just don't want any more exceptions on all these companies coming in and claiming they're not loans or some other reason why they shouldn't be subject to our usury laws. All right, so that is, I believe, everything I had to cover. We've got a lot of experts on here. I haven't looked at the chat or anything. Does anybody have any questions? I tried to go through quickly to leave time for that. Questions, feel free to ask. If not, feel free to reach out to us. And please remember to make your voice heard. It's extremely important that your legislators hear from you on things that you are interested in. And don't forget, reach out with good comments and bad. I think a lot of times all they want to do is, a lot of legislators just hear a lot of bad comments about, I don't like this, I don't like that. But when your legislator does something that you like, reach out and say, thank you for putting that bill in. Thank you for your comments on that bill. I appreciate it. All right.
Jay, it looks like we've got a couple of questions.
All right.
I see some hand raised.
Hands raised. Oh yeah. Trudy Ann Clark.
Yes, good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
My question is, with the housing for the landlords charging for maintenance, I just got an increase in rent, and because he's about to increase the rent, I asked for certain things to be maintained, right? And I guess he included that in the rent as well. So is that illegal for the landlord to do?
So great question. It's all confusing for a number of reasons. Right now, landlords have unfettered discretion, unlimited ability to raise the rent. And we have another bill that we're supporting that we expect Delegate Clark and Senator Boysko to introduce that would allow localities to put some very reasonable limits on how much a landlord can increase rent year over year. But that is separate then, or separate from the bill that we're working on regarding maintenance fees. What we're hearing from various tenants is that when they call their landlord or submit an online request for maintenance to come and look at something that has broken or is about to break in their unit, the landlords are charging a fee just to go out and look at the property and see what's wrong. Sometimes those fees are as high as $100. Under current law, it's the landlord's responsibility to keep everything in good working order, make sure that there are no health or safety problems. If the tenant causes the problem, well, then of course the tenant has to pay to have it repaired, potentially has to pay for an extra maintenance charge too. But that's not what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about just your basic, hey, my sink is backed up or my heater doesn't seem to be working, right? They shouldn't be charging to come check on that. But the way the bill will be drafted, it should be clear that that will not cover, unfortunately, those just, hey, I'm going to increase your rent by some amount, and that being the reason. So we have two separate bills working on those two separate issues.
Okay, so in regards to that, kind of not in the form of maintenance, but is it legal for landlords to increase the rent, like maybe going up to like half of what they charge you from?
It is, unfortunately it is. And we're hearing about maybe not quite a 50% rent increase, but certainly 30% rent increases in different parts of the Commonwealth, Northern Virginia, Stafford, elsewhere. And so again, it's Delegate Clark and Senator Boysko. If you know how to look for bills on legislative information systems, look at their bills once they're all up. But also feel free to email me separately and I can get you more information on that. We are having a tenant day of action next Wednesday, January 15th. That is one of the bills we'll be covering. We're going to try to set up legislative visits for tenant and tenant advocates who want to participate in our tenant day of action, and certainly would love to have you come and share your story, either one-on-one with some delegates and senators, or depending on what is on the docket next Wednesday, possibly testifying. So please reach out, sign up for our email alerts, because I'm pretty sure Mara's going to send something out tomorrow about all of that.
Okay, thank you so much, Christy. Appreciate it.
Okay.
I have one.
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Steve King, I'm with the Office Community Wealth Building with the City of Richmond. I was a little late joining the call, but wasn't sure if this was covered, but was interested in knowing whether your organization intends to take a position on the increased minimum wage bill that was filed, and just what you all are doing. I may have missed kind of what you all are doing around kind of economic security policy issues beyond kind of some of the things associated with fees.
So yes, we do support the increased minimum wage bills. We are not the lead on those bills, but we do support those bills, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm looking at the comments. I don't think I see any other questions.
Yeah, I'd just like to jump in really quickly, Jay, and say that I'm going to share the link for our legislative advocacy page, which is just a good resource for some of the things that folks have mentioned in terms of contact information for members of our team if you have follow-up questions, information about how to track a bill and find a committee, and also some of that content from the discussion today about our legislative agenda. So I'm going to share that below. And we'll also be sending out a recording of this to the registration list after today's session. So if you have any questions on that end, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be sharing that just now.
Okay. And if anybody wants to send me an email directly, feel free, jay@vplc.org. I think somebody's trying to message me and I'm not, but that person can please email me. I'm somewhat limited on my ability to figure out some of these things on Zoom. So email me directly. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, everybody. It's going to be fun.